Hi everybody, this is the video that we've been waiting for, well at least I've been waiting for. It's the one where we talk about how to properly set up a React dev environment so that we can use all the cool things that a modern development workflow offers for building our React apps. Here's the thing, the way we've been building our apps right now isn't really typical of how you'll be building them in the real world. Our arrangement has been really simple because the focus was on helping understand the ins and outs of React and its quirks, and less so on figuring out how to configure a project, dealing with the build system, and all the things that really go into building an app properly. And so we're going to fix that in this video, because here's the thing. What we've been doing right now has all been done in the browser itself. We added the React libraries directly from a CDN. We added the Babel in browser transformer to turn their JSX into something that a browser can understand. And the thing is, this is great for learning, but in reality, all that computation your browser is doing, turning all of your React and JSX specific content into something they can understand, is time consuming. It's a performance intensive task, which is something you don't want to burden all of your users with. After all, React is all about really fast and efficient code. Having it be slowed down by what you're doing isn't really the best idea. So what we really want to do is this. We want to use what is considered a modern development workflow, which is made up of Node, Webpack, Babel, and a bunch of other libraries. And the way it works is this. You'll still be writing code the way you have. There'll be some minor modifications to how you structure your app, and we'll look at it in a little bit. But the end result is, instead of having your browser do all the compilation from JSX to JavaScript and any other things that need to be done, the final output of what you create will be HTML, CSS, JavaScript in a form that a browser can readily understand, in an optimized form that is probably minified and takes into account all the things that just make your app run faster, independent of how you actually wrote your code, just some of the easy things that you can knock off. And so that's the end result of what we're going to be creating, is really clean, really compact output of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but the way it's going to be done is not through the browser, but through this combination of various build components that we will look at in a moment. And so the first thing is this. We're going to use something known as create React app. And that's one of the things that greatly simplifies how you get up and running with that particular approach. So the first thing you need to know is this. You need to have Node installed. So many of you probably already have it installed. If you do not, go to nodejs.org and install the latest version that you can. And that will be the basic part of where we start from. So once you have Node installed, the next step is to launch your terminal. Now this could be the command prompt on Windows, could be the bash shell on Windows, or it could even be the terminal on Mac, or any combination of various terminals that you use in the past. Doesn't matter. Just make sure to have a terminal that allows you to execute commands. And so the first thing we're going to do is this. I'm on the Mac because I have my terminal running right now. And so what I'm going to provide here is I'm going to first go to the place where I want my project to actually be created. So I'm going to type in cd/desktop. So I can go to my desktop essentially. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and install create React app. Now, I don't know why I went to desktop first. I didn't have to do this, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to type in npm. First, I'm going to type in npm and enter, just to make sure that npm is properly installed. You want to do this just to make sure that if you installed npm, that your command prompt is aware of it and is able to go on from there. If this screen isn't showing up, if npm shows an error such as like command not found, you should probably pause the video and try to debug your installation of Node to make sure everything has been set up. So in my case, npm is totally working fine. So we go ahead and start by installing create React app. Let me actually make the screen a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to type in is npm install -g, which means it's going to be installed globally, and the word create -react app. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Now, depending on your environment, your network connection, and various things will take a little bit longer to do. Oh, in this case, I'm getting an error. It says I need to run this as a command as an administrator, which means that it's going to, on command prompt on Windows, you're going to right click on it as you search for it and say run as administrator, or in the Mac world, type in sudo. So sudo npm install -g create React app, and enter my password. And now it'll take a few moments, but it'll take about, depending on a variety of things, but you can see that I already had the project installed earlier. So just updated a few packages and still gave me the end result that I cared about. All right, so right now I have the app installed, and right now I'm already in, I have create React app, the library installed, and I'm already in my desktop. Feel free to go to any folder you want to actually create your app in, but the desktop seems to be a pretty good location. So once I have this, all I'm going to do is type in create React app and the name of the project that I want to create. So this name has to be all lowercase, no spaces in it. So I'm going to type in hello world, just one word, hello world, and hit enter. And once I've done this, you'll see that in my users Krupa desktop folder, there's going to be a folder called hello world created, and inside it a whole lot of things are going to be created that will that'll get my React project up and running. So I may pause this video at this point and then have all the installation go through, depending on how long it takes, but it seems to be making pretty good progress. So I will just keep uttering empty words until the installation is fully complete. So some of you may be wondering why the speed varies. One of the things I mentioned is your disk access. The other one is also whether you have antivirus software installed. Sometimes if you have a very aggressive antivirus like Windows Defender running, you may find that installation takes a little bit longer than it normally needs to, but if you don't, you'll find it's much faster. All right, so right now I've created my project, and let's see how it works. I'm going to go ahead and go into my Hello World folder, and I'm just going to run it. cd hello world. And the way you run your project once you've created it is by typing in npm and start. Now, these are all commands that are probably very common to you if you're familiar with using Node. If it's the first time where you're using Node, there's some memorization that needs to go on. Not a whole lot, just a few. And as you can see from the output that gets created for you as part of creating your project, you get a lot of on-screen help as well. So npm start. I'm going to hit enter. And once I've done this, you're going to see an application, running your default browser, and it'll take a moment. But what happens is this. You'll see welcome to React. To get started, edit source app.js and save to reload. So create React app is pretty much it's an end-to-end solution that gets you all the scripts you need for being able to not only create your app, but also build it, deploy it. And for example, in this case, I'm running the app, it spawns up a web server and gets all the various hooks up and running configured properly. So when I mentioned earlier that you need to set up your proper modern dev environment with all of these components like Node, Webpack, and Babel, what I didn't mention is that create React app takes all that stuff, does it automatically for you. Behind the scenes, everything is being done. But you as a developer don't have to worry too much about it. Now let's take a look at what Create React App did just to understand what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and open my desktop folder. Let me escape from PowerPoint for a second. Let me go into VS Code and just add my Hello World directory that's going to be opened. All right. And so when I look at my Hello World directory, you'll see a variety of folders that get displayed. My Node modules folder. There's actually a large collection of various, things that are being imported that just help with the building of the project, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. You have the public directory and you have the source directory. Now, these are the two places where I'll be spending most of my time. If you look at index.html, this is the page that ultimately gets displayed in the browser. So everything you see here is a result of building all the contents of public and the source folder. So you can see index.html. You can see, the fav icon. You can see app.js is really where we are specifying our component and a lot of the things that needs to happen. And notice that with this approach, when we have all these various components, you have things where you're importing files and you're also exporting the files as well. Now, these are things that you need to kind of keep in mind, but just to give you a quick overview of this, when you're running in this particular model, there's no concept of what files are in play and what aren't in play. So you need to tell the build system, in this case Webpack, what exactly are the components and what exactly are the dependencies, is a more proper term for it, that this particular page will need. And you declare all of them via these statements called import. And we'll get into more detail into them as we go along, but you'll see like import React very frequently, where you have import React and import the component keyword, and it's going to be imported from the React location, which is actually in our Node modules folder. And so it's just a way of simplifying how you reference a lot of these, more complex libraries, or even dependencies within your page. For example, we're referencing the logo as something we're displaying as part of the image source. And that logo is actually coming from logo.svg, which is in our project and located right here. Well, if you can visualize SVG, it looks like the React logo pretty nicely. And so on. You see a variety of all these things that are happening. And so index.js is the entry point to our app, and you can see here's where React down at render call lives, and we have getting element by root, which is in our index.html. So what we used to see in entirely composed of in one single page when we're using the CDN approach of the React libraries and in-browser Babel transformer. In this case, we're distributing it across multiple pages, which is in many ways just a much better way of dealing with it. Each of your components and each of the main chunks of your app will live in their own single file that you can then modify and then spread across as needed. And it's especially convenient if you're going to be working on a project with multiple people. You're going to have each set of components be worked on by different individuals without too much clobbering and overwriting going on the same exact document. All right, so that's the, at a very high level, a bird's eye view of how our project is set up and what Create React App does. And you can see the end result is just a simple HTML page that happens to have some JavaScript inside it. In fact, if we go to view source, you can see that right here. You'll see that what you're not seeing is that all the JavaScript files we saw earlier, you're not exactly seeing each one referenced individually. You have this file called bundle.js. All the JavaScript, all the React libraries, everything gets kind of coalesced into one location, and you're going to see it right here as this massive JavaScript file, but it's just one of them, so it's actually pretty convenient. So there you are. So pretty straightforward. So the thing is, we're not done yet though. What I want to do is actually show you how to actually build the Hello World app. And I don't just start, I use Create React App to set up the complicated pieces, which is really the build system that goes from all these various files to an individual HTML, CSS, and JavaScript file at the end. So let's go ahead and create Hello World from the very beginning. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete everything in a public directory. And the easiest way of doing that is by actually going into Finder or equivalent terminal and just deleting all the contents yourself. So I'm going to delete them, move to trash, and then go to my source directory and move to trash as well. All right, now we're in, this is my favorite state to start in because I get to now define exactly what goes into my React app and be able to have more control over the various things that are going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go into my public directory, and actually, I'm going to skip my public directory for now. Let me go to my source directory. I create a new file. I'm going to call this index.js. And in this file, I'm going to define the very basic things that will be going into our Hello World app, which is a component that we render that will ultimately display the words Hello World to the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to import the React libraries. Import React from React. That's the first line. And what this does is, if you ever see the React keyword in my app, it's going to be coming from the React library, which we've already installed as part of running React, Create React App earlier. Import React DOM, and this will be from the React DOM library. One of the things you'll find is that once you get out of this model of having one massive library, like one React and React DOM library, it's that much easier to break apart parts of your app into smaller and smaller chunks so that the final output is not a monolithic library of functionality you never use, but it's more optimized for the things that you do use. So you'll actually see import statements for at a more fine-grained level for a lot of the functionality in your app. So don't be afraid if you're seeing many React calls in this approach, whereas you might have seen only one React library you might have added in the CDN approach earlier. All right. So import React DOM, import from React DOM. Okay, perfect. So now let's type in our code, React DOM.render, and let's go ahead and specify what we want to go in here. Hello World, comma, and document.get element by ID, and let's just say root. That's it. Pretty straightforward. And this is no different than what you might have seen before. All right, and so notice that now I'm referencing a Hello World component, but this component doesn't actually exist. It doesn't even do anything right now. And so there are two ways of doing this. First I can do is I can assume I want to create a React Hello World file. Say import Hello World from /Hello World. All right, so all it's missing is a Hello World file. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this hello world.js. Notice that when I'm importing the file, though, I didn't exactly mention a .js file extension. You don't have to do that. The way it's configured is to automatically assume this will have an extension of .js. All right, now I'm at hello world, and what I'm going to do here is just like before. I'm going to write the various things I need to have the app work, which means I need to first, again, import the React library, import React, and instead I'm also going to import React and component from React as well, and you can see that I'm using the ES6, the operator for being able to kind of bucket these things with using the brackets, the little expansion syntax. And so I'm going to type in class hello world extends component. Simple. And in it we have a render method, and it's going to be return. And what we're going to return is div class name equals hello container. And let's close the div, semicolon. And now let's go ahead and make sure we add h1 hello world and h1. All right. So all we're saying here is we're going to return some JSX, which is a div element with h1, which says hello world. All right, not too bad. So we have this part of our app already defined. Okay, and so now let's go ahead and test our app. Now, the way you test your app, let me actually go here. Oh, it says failed to compile, and that is because export default. Oh, so one thing I forgot to mention is this. When you're actually dealing with these components, when you're combining all these files, you need to be able to identify this and have the builder know that this file exists in memory for when your app is running. So you do export default hello world. And this is what helps identify hello world once it's been imported into our application. And so now I'm going to go here. And so notice that you get real-time compilation because we ran npm start earlier on the same project. As you're making changes, you'll see errors coming up. So you'll see one error that comes up right here, and that is index.html doesn't exist, because that makes sense. All we've really done so far is just add the various components for making our app kind of just do the JavaScript side. So let's go ahead and add the HTML file. So new file, index.html. And this can be as basic or as complex as you want. So I'm just going to keep it pretty simple. I'm just do HTML, and we'll make it cleaner. I'm missing the doc type, and I'm missing all of these things, which I guess is a problem, but we'll worry about that later. So body and div id equals root. And let's see if this is actually good enough. I get I'm missing a lot of stuff, but we'll see what happens. And all right, you can now run hello world from your browser. And notice what happens. I just made a modification, added my index.html file, and hello world just appears in the browser. And you can see that it's actually mostly done in real time. In fact, let me go ahead and make this half my screen, so that way you can see see this more in real time. If I were to go ahead and go to index.js or hello world.js and type in hello world and put a smiley face after my exclamation mark and save, notice that you'll see hello world, a smiley face appear right after it. That is pretty cool, right? And so this is the last thing we're going to do, and that is add our CSS file just to make our app look a little bit nicer. So let me type in index.css, and let me go and close this view. So index.css, I'm going to specify just a few style rules. Body, not padding, got a little too excited typing there. Body, and let's make the display flex, align items center, justify content center, min height 100 VH, and margin 0. All right, and so I'm gonna, I've made my changes, I've saved it, yet nothing is really happening here. And the reason is this: we haven't actually specified that the index.js file will be used. And historically, you might think that my CSS file, sorry, I did say index.js, I meant index.css. Historically, you might think that your index.css file needs to be referenced in your HTML. But the way everything is set up is that you don't actually have to go that far. You can actually just go and select it from your index.js itself. So I'm going to go import, and I'm just going to type in /index.css. And once you do that, the build system kind of automatically knows what to do in this place, which is make sure the right elements are created for you and placed in here. So for example, you can see that, well, in this case, it's all divided in JavaScript, but it can actually be made to work in CSS as well. And so, if you want, I can go back and add the appropriate doc type declarations, doc type HTML. I think it's an exclamation mark somewhere. Why am I doing this live? I'm not sure. Okay, doc type HTML, and let's see. Let me just look at my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. Yep, doctype HTML. Then you can also have like your meta tags for, your head tag with UTF-8 specified, all these things. But again, all that stuff doesn't really matter right now because the goal was really how to get your project up and running. And so with that, we're actually done. We're at the end of this video. It's actually a great introduction into getting started with building your app using this modern dev environment. And there's several benefits to it. One of the things I mentioned is that you no longer have to have your browser take the performance hit of taking your raw uncompiled app and dealing with all the JSX or JavaScript HTML CSS conversion. You defer all of that now to the build process, which generates a nice bundle that creates all these various things for you. So your browser just running code in its most efficient form possible. And the other thing is, this approach is also more common with how you might be using other libraries in the future, because while we're learning React, we use the approach of just having everything be bundled as part of individual JS files that we include as script tags. But as you start using other third-party libraries or start extending your React development environment, or even looking at tutorials and other material on how to learn React and go further, you'll find that they all mimic a workflow where you have to set up Node, have to set up Babel, and all of these various packages. It's all done automatically for you. And so you have a great starting point that gets you 90% of the day there for almost everything you want to do. The remaining 10% is just the instructions you're going to see online for how to get that particular library involved or make minor tweaks to your project to have your application running. All right, if you have any questions, post in the forums at formatgroup.com. Don't post in the comments here because I don't check them as frequently, and the formatting makes it very difficult to make all this all work. And if you like this, tell your friends and enemies all about this. Subscribe to be notified of other videos I create. Follow me at Krupa for a lot of cat videos, occasionally some science gifs, and some content on web development. Just something that I happen to enjoy and you might enjoy as well. And there's a book, Learning React, that covers not only this material, but a whole lot of other things in text-based form. So if you're someone who enjoys reading for a little bit more detail than what a video can provide, I highly recommend you go get the book, check it out, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time.